Few people have heard of orientation and mobility specialists, despite the important work these people do. We're thrilled to have Kassy Maloney with us, an O&M specialist who dedicates her life to helping others find their way, literally. Get ready to discover the unique challenges and rewarding moments that come with guiding individuals with visual impairments to navigate their surroundings confidently. This is Career Chats with Katie and Robin.
Welcome, Kassy. We are so excited to have you on Career Chats today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
To begin, why don't you tell us what you do and what propelled you into this type of work?
I'm an orientation and mobility specialist. What that is orientation is knowing where you are in space, whether that's your room, whether that's your home, whether that's out in the community or even at school. Then mobility is getting to where you want to go safely and being able to do so as independently as possible. I teach people with visual impairments how to know where they are and then how to get to where they want to go safely. So sometimes that looks like a baby learning how to crawl to its mom, or sometimes it looks like a kid learning how to play on the playground or get from class to class or figure out where the water fountain is down the hall, or high schoolers who need to figure out how to take their girlfriend on a date and how to be as independent as possible while doing that. Or as an adult, how to get to work, how to go grocery shopping, and how to even get a job, or how to organize your things, or where your body is in relation to your surroundings. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And we teach any age from birth all the way to death. And how I got into it was kind of funny. I always wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I had these dreams of having my own classroom with all these cute bulletin boards, and I would have my cute little students, and we would have little popcorn parties. And that was my dream life. And then I got to college. And somewhere right before college, actually, I had been teaching already. And my class, I had a class of preschoolers the summer before I went to college. And they were so horrible. It was so hard. And I was like, if I had to do this for the next 30 years, I'd be stuck in a classroom and but I was already enrolled in school. And the dorm that I was living in was the education dorm. So it's not like, I can just change my major. Because if I change my major, I lose housing at the beginning of the semester. So I loved that program. I went to the Florida State University. It's such a great educational program. And it was fantastic to live in a dorm with all education majors. However, the fear of not knowing where I was going to live if I changed my major was real.
Wow.
So we had to go to these meetings with our dorm every week or every month or something like that. And at one point they had a panel of all of the different programs in the College of Education. And one of them was visual impairments. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that's so interesting. Because up until that point, I was like 19 and my life had been so suburban. I was a suburban girl and I had gone to a suburban high school. I made a 3.75 GPA. I got into my school of choice. I got into my program of choice. And then there I was going to go be a kindergarten teacher. And I was like, that's a very boring life story. What about this other thing? That sounds cool. So I did a lot of soul searching. My program director had really been pushing me into special ed. And I had been saying, you think I'm a good person, but I'm not that good of a person. Like, you don't really know me. I show up and I'm a straight A student here, but I'm not, I don't have that much patience. I can't do it. Turns out he was right. And I enrolled in the school the next semester and I started my program my sophomore year because I knew. And it was so hard at first. When you go to college and you want to be somebody who's teaching people with visual impairments, they put you under blindfold a lot. And it's such a different world. And I had lots of breakdowns. And I had lots of times where I literally sat on the sidewalk for 3 or 4 hours during class and refused to move because I was just like, I cannot do this. This is so hard. I had to learn Braille. I had to learn Braille math. I hate math. I'm not good at math. And now you're making me put it in Braille. So hard. But I persevered and eventually got a full-time job as an orientation and mobility specialist. So my full-time job was as an O&M specialist. I moved for work to the best school in the nation for it. I was very lucky to secure a job at what we call Cinderella's Castle because it's just the best place in the nation and possibly the world for what we do. And I have just been so fortunate to be really supported here and to be among some of the best O&M specialists in the world.
So amazing. So since you mentioned it, let's jump into what are the requirements that you need, what training or certifications are necessary for the job.
Just take this 5-minute example of a baby's life. A baby without visual impairments watches their mom make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day for 5 years. Then when it's their time, they already understand peanut butter, where it's located, that you have to twist off the top, that you have to scoop everything, that bread comes in a loaf and wherever it's stored, and that it's already pre-sliced typically for us. And they understand all these concepts of where everything is in the kitchen. And then by the time that they're 5 or something, they can basically make their own, even if they didn't eat the peanut butter and jelly sandwich for many years, because they learned it incidentally. 90% of your learning is done incidentally. People don't teach you what this is. You just observe it. Just like when you walk into a place, let's say you go to a fancy restaurant and you're in flip-flops and cut off shorts. You can observe that you're not fitting into the societal or cultural norm at that moment. And then you can observe what you need to do. People with visual impairments don't. And it depends on where, when they became visually impaired, whatever. So there's a teacher, students with visual impairments, they teach 8 out of 9 subjects that make up for that 90% that you lose from incidental learning. Orientation mobility teaches 1. And so it's super low incidence, meaning that what ends up happening when you go to get a job in orientation and mobility, you can be commissioned by different organizations and their requirements are really what you have to follow. The typical route is to go through a university program, and there are a few. I sent you guys a link so that if you guys in the community are interested in becoming an orientation and mobility specialist, you can go look at that link to see which programs are offered. That's the typical route. There is another school in Louisiana that will go a more vocational route as well. And then it really depends on who you're commissioned by. Some places only hire you if you are also a teacher of students with visual impairments, and then you have your teaching certification in that state. Some places require a certification. So we are accredited by I'm just going to call it ACVREP. Some places require the accreditation and some places don't.
So we would love to know, what does a typical day on the job look like?
It depends on who you're commissioned by, again, meaning who you work for. Typically, we work for school districts and we go from school to school within that school district. It could really be anything. And that's the fun part about this, because you never know what's going to happen. You might be an orientation and mobility specialist for 20 or 30 years, but none of your days are the same. And there's no repetitiveness because every learner is changing. Everything is changing all of the time. So let's just paint a picture of what a typical day could look like for you. If you work for a school district, you would probably go see your first student and you work one-on-one with your students. And maybe your first student is an elementary school student and you work with them for a class period and you pull them out of English or art class and you practice routes around the school. You might practice cane skills. You might practice using a monocular. You might practice how to get around the school. And during that time, because they're in elementary school, you infuse games and you're making it super fun. Maybe you're singing songs. Maybe you stop off at the playground for a little playtime, or maybe you're delivering notes or letters to people around school. And then when that time is done, then you bring them back to class or to their next class, and then you get in your car and you drive to the next school. And let's say your next student is a high school student. who has multiple impairments. So you want to go there and maybe you're working with the occupational therapist at that time. You're co-teaching. So you go into the room and maybe you're helping the occupational therapist help the learner figure out how to bring their hands to midline, to the middle of their body, or handle sensory stimuli, or maybe you're working on how to get around the room with them, or even like how to use the bathroom. I don't know, it just depends on what they're working on. And then again, at the end of your time, you say goodbye, then you get in your car and you go to the next school. And that is typically what a day looks like. Lunch is typically eaten in your car, if I'm being honest with you. And then you have some sort of planning period and you might have a meeting that you have to go to. And that's, a typical day. It's typically a school day. And you are on the school teacher schedule. So if you're on a school teacher schedule, which is my favorite schedule because you get summers and winter break and all of that.
So what is your favorite part?
When people step into a version of themselves that they didn't believe that they were before, there's a smile that comes across their face. It's so tiny. But just start to watch for it in other people whenever you're around them. When they didn't hold a vision of themselves as being an independent traveler or as being somebody who could cross a street or do something of that nature, once they do it, because it's really scary to push people outside of their comfort zone, they get this little smile and the goosebumps. It's just like this little thing right there. That's why I do it. It's for that moment when they say, yes, I just went up to a busy intersection and I was so scared. I did it.
Oh. So what would you say is the most challenging part of the job?
That no day is the same.
You're so fun, but also challenging.
Yes, because, you'll be having a lesson plan. Say you're riding a city bus with a learner and then right in front of the bus, there's an accident. What do? You're not in your car. Your learner has a test in 30 minutes. You have another student in 30 minutes. What are you going to do? And that can be really challenging and figuring it out. Also, I think working with people, because if you come into any situation with your ego and you want them to do what you want them to do, but they don't know who you are because you're not there very often. O&M specialists aren't in the schools very often, and they don't have that rapport, then working with team members can be really challenging because you might have 15, 20 students on your caseload, and each of those students is in special ed. So they have at least 3 to 4 team members that you're working with for every single student. And you have to figure out how to be a good person to all of those team members and still advocate and get people to all step out of their comfort zone. Like, you're asking people to really trust in something that's so scary. Putting on a blindfold and crossing a street or like putting scissors in a child's hand who can't see, like, that is scary for everybody. I think that there's a lot of resistance that comes up with that kind of stuff, and you really have to be able to navigate it.
So what kinds of personalities do you think would thrive in this type of day-to-day work environment?
People who have really good time management and can be autonomous, because nobody knows what you do. You might be the only person in your area who has your job. So your boss probably has never even heard of your job before, let alone can they support you in it. If you have a question of, am I doing the right thing? You're going to have to be able to figure it out. So you have to be a big problem solver. Scheduling with that many students and their schedules is also really tricky. So you have to really be able to manage all of the nuances and all of the paperwork and everything. But overall, if you have a kind heart and you care, and you just want to do good in the world, but you like not having a desk job, and you enjoy being outside, and you enjoy going to different places in the community, and you like the freedom that comes with that, then O&M is absolutely for you, because there's so much freedom in it.
What would you tell someone who's thinking about entering the field?
To do a little research and see if you can reach out to one of the schools and if they can put you in touch with somebody to talk to. Take the questions that you guys have been asking me and have them interview somebody who does this job, because it's not for everybody, but if it is for you, like it's really for you.
And do you think there will be more or less opportunities for people to do this work in the future?
Many more. Right now, we're in a huge teacher shortage and nobody knows about O&M, really. I mean, and I didn't either until I fell into it. It's not marketed. People don't know about it. So I'm grateful that you guys are having me on your podcast, and hopefully this reaches somebody who can look into it or even tell somebody else that this profession exists. But also because so many more people are being saved medically. Also, people are living longer, and a third of the population of people who have visual impairments are older populations. And there's a big need for orientation and mobility in those environments.
Where would you work for the older folks then?
You would work for a vocational rehabilitation center. They're often run by the state.
Okay.
So for you personally, is this what you plan on doing until you retire, or is there a next step for you? What does the future look like?
So I would in O&M for forever. I love it. And I still have students that I teach. But at some point, for me personally, I now run an organization that supports that kind of teacher. So that way we can change the rhetoric around teaching. Because, there's this whole thing about like teachers, quote unquote, don't do it for the money. And like, I do it for the money. I have to eat. Like, it's like food. And I don't need that much money, but like I do need some, and I can't work 80 hours. And I think a lot of teachers get burned out because they have believed this rhetoric, which isn't true. You could be a fantastic teacher and still have a great personal life, but you have to be able to do things in a way that is more impactful if you're going to be a great teacher and stay in the field. So I support teachers now as my bigger part of my job. So I run an organization called Allied Independence, and we host conferences for orientation and mobility specialists, as well as teachers, so students with visual impairments. And then we also have a monthly membership where we offer lesson plans and workshops, and that those monthly membership participants, that community has their own mentor. So they have direct access to somebody in the field who will answer their questions if they ever feel lost, or if they ever, don't want to feel like they're on a lonely island, or if they ever have a question. And that's what we do. And I absolutely love it because we get to help people all around the world.
I love that. That's awesome.
So beyond getting paid, which we all need to get paid, what's kind of like the biggest perk to having your occupation?
I would say this is going to juxtapose what I had previously said about how we don't have that many of us around, but because we're such a small community, the community really being able to have this really interesting thing in common with other people, whether they're in your same city or whether you text with them or whether they're in a Facebook group or whatever, having those people in your life is just so refreshing. And then I think also being able to have this really micro legacy where there are so many people out in the world right now, I'm getting goosebumps, who literally are better people because of me. And because I showed up that day and they showed up that day and we worked. And it's not easy work. I'm outside. If it's snowing and you live in somewhere where it snows, like you have to be out there. If it's raining, you have to be out in the rain. But to really watch people flourish and to watch them go from being shy or staying at home every Saturday night to like going out on the town, getting a job, going to college, and to know that they feel confident moving around in their environment because of the work that I have done, that is why I do what I do.
Sounds very rewarding.
Yes, so rewarding. Wow.
Is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know about O&M or getting into it, the work itself? Any last pearls of wisdom?
I would say just follow your heart. If you feel compelled to look into orientation and mobility or teaching students with visual impairments, or the adult component of that, which is a vocational rehabilitation teacher, look into it and see if there are options around for you, because we need you and we want you in our field. And there are so many options to get in. You don't just have to go the university route. There are online courses that you can take, and then you go during the summer and then meet up with your cohort for cane class or what have you. There's really flexible options, and you can really only just take every day one step at a time. So if you just take a step forward every day, everything will work out.
Kassy, thank you so much for being here today. This was wonderful. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in this type of work after listening to you. You sound so passionate about it, and it seems so rewarding. So we just really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Career Chats is hosted by Katie Huddleston and Robin Coney. Show notes and guest info can be found on our website, careerchats.show. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love you to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, stay curious.